Howdy, folks, and welcome to the Hunting Stories Podcast. I'm your host, Michael, and again, we got another good one for you today. Today, we're actually connecting with Kevin Gibbons. Kevin actually is a newer listener. He's listened to maybe 10, 12 episodes, but he is a friend of someone who's been on the podcast, Eric Christensen. He's one of the founders of Captured Gear, and man, he had some great stories for us today. I had a lot of fun just chatting with him about his childhood, hunting rabbits, dude's great. So, Kevin, thank you so much for coming on the podcast and, of course, for reaching out, saying you have some fun stories to share. I really do appreciate that. You listeners, make sure you give Capture Gear a follow. And then beyond that, whatever you're listening to on right now, give us a 5-star review and a follow there so that we can, be a little bit higher in the search results. Tell a friend about us. Get some more people reaching out saying I got some fun stories to tell. But that's it, guys. Let's go ahead and kick this thing off. Thank you again. Now let's let Kevin tell you some of his stories. All right, Kevin, welcome to the Hunting Stories Podcast, brother. How are you?
Great. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, man, I'm excited that you're here. It's a small world, right? We had one of your colleagues or business partners on the podcast not too long ago, and I think because of that, you started listening, and you were like, "Man, I got some stories I want to tell," and you reached out, man. So thank you so much for doing that. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, I'm stoked. I think what you got going on is cool, and I'm not just trying to stoke your ego here,
No,
but
it's too late.
It's because everybody's got stories. You don't have to. I mean, You've had some amazing guests on that have very credible dudes that have some awesome stories, and like you said, I hadn't heard of you before Eric came on, but I've been listening to a bunch of your episodes. I just took a trip to Idaho and back to drop our daughter off to college, and my wife and I were listening to you mostly the whole way. So it's been fun. But I love that it's an approachable podcast for anybody. Like everybody's got hunting stories. So whether you're really well known, if you're Cameron Haynes or Ted Nugent or not, you probably got some cool stories.
Yeah, I agree. In fact, I think some of the craziest stories I've heard have been from the average Joe, rather than the big social media guys that are out there. I mean, they have some crazy stories too. Like Dan Staten, for example, when he came across that marijuana grow in the middle of the mountains. You got to be kidding me. But man, I appreciate it. And what I'll say is I don't really vet the stories before I hear them, which is kind of funny because I want to get my honest reaction to them when I'm on the podcast. Mm. So I've said this before on the podcast. I think most of my episodes are absolutely amazing. Some of them, they're less amazing. And I encourage everyone to go find them by listening to every single one of them. And let's kick this thing off right. Kevin, why don't you introduce yourself, a little bit of your hunting background, and we'll start from there.
I grew up here in Arizona. I've been born and raised here my whole life. My family actually has really deep roots in Southern Arizona. I'm really proud of that. And I actually have some cool stories that I'm going to kind of share from my ancestry and the time here in Southern Arizona. But yeah, as far as intro, I did the engineering program at ASU with my older brother David, and I'll be sharing a lot of stories with me and David. We've been kind of partners in crime ever since we were kids, so he's a big part of my life. We've pretty much worked together the whole, almost our whole career. We did the engineering program. Our first internship was at a company that did body armor, a startup company that made body armor. And then I went to a little bit bigger body armor company, and then we both ended up working together at Boeing. And then while we were working at Boeing is when we started Gibbs Arms with my uncle. And so as a firearm company, we had an idea for a side charging AR and some gun stuff. So we had some innovations there that we kind of centered our business on. Had a lot of fun with that. And through our time with Gibbs Arms, so once we kind of, after college, we had a little bit of a break from hunting because just so busy and building up the business. So we finally got to a point where we could start hunting more. Was when we got into big game hunting, and that's what led to meeting Eric, who was on your podcast. Yeah. And
let me ask you a quick question. Sorry to interrupt, but you said you took a break from hunting, get that busy college and building a business. And then you got into big game hunting after, but you got back into hunting. So where did you start your hunting? What was the first stuff that you did? Were you upland? Waterfowl?
So I could say that we've kind of hunted our whole life, but we've kind of have 3 distinct phases of hunting. Like when I was a kid, we grew up out in the middle of nowhere, and I'll kind of come back to some of how we got there, but we grew up like pretty much off grid,
Yeah, just
southern
shooting
Arizona.
anything, that kind of hunting.
And
That's
and yeah, dude,
boy hunting.
yeah, Dave and I running around the desert loose with 22s and just killing a ton of stuff. So
Yeah.
it was super fun.
Yeah.
So I kind of had like this small game childhood hunting that was super fun. And then in college, we kind of got into, we wanted to get into big game hunting, but and we drew a couple of tags, didn't have a ton of success, but we found that bird hunting is what we had time for.
Okay.
So I had a good buddy that had a bird dog, and he hooked me up with getting a dog, and I trained this dog on my own. And I just say that because it was super fun to train this dog.
Yeah.
And then so we while we were in college, it was nice because like you could just get away for a couple of hours, and there's good quail hunting all over southern Arizona. So we would just zip out for a few hours with the dogs, go hunt a little bit, get back to doing whatever we had to do. And then we got and then a couple of jobs after college, kept bird hunting. And then when we started Gibbs Arms, obviously that was pretty intense.
Okay.
And because we were still I was still working full time at Boeing while we were getting Gibbs Arms off the ground and running. So it was super busy. So I didn't really have time to do a lot of hunting. And then like I said, we once things kind of got to a good pace and we had hired help, and then we were able to kind of get back into hunting. And so I say that back into hunting, but really like our first like real foray into like big game hunting.
And so why did you guys pull that trigger, right? Or like, pun intended, but like why did you go from what you were doing with the birds and all that to being like, big game time?
Yeah, maybe this is a good segue to kind of kick it back to my ancestry that I kind of talked about.
Let's do it.
Because they were the pull. All the stories that I grew up from my grandpa and everything and everything is what, like, we have a pretty rich heritage of dudes growing up in Arizona and hunting. And so that was the pull. It was like, man, I've always wanted a big game hunt, kind of growing up on all these stories of my grandpa. So that was kind of like, oh man, we got to do big game hunting.
Okay.
So just, yeah. So kind of how that story goes is my when Arizona was still a territory, I think it was in like 1899, my great grandpa brought his whole family. Yeah. He brought his family. They had like 16 kids. They're born in Texas, like raised their family in Texas, but his wife was having some health issues. So for a lot of the reasons you hear about, like tuberculosis and whatever, like people are moving out to drier climate.
Okay.
Yeah. So that was my great grandparents and their family. So they came out to Arizona, settled in like Cochise County, is that southeast corner of Arizona. So you got the Chiricahuas, which is kind of the tail end of the Rockies at the, getting down to the Mexican border, and and Tombstone's really close to there. So it was very much still kind of like wild west.
Yeah.
So they have so they get down there, and then and it's funny because like I grew up on a lot of stories from my family, like and just so you know, I've had to. It's been interesting because I've gone back and fact checked a bunch of stuff that I've heard just to make sure that what I'm sharing is accurate. Because I was like, dude, these are stories that I've been telling us and hearing as a family, and I tell my kids and whatever. But I was like, well, dude, if I'm going to go on a podcast, I better make sure that this is legit. I'm not like, throwing a bunch of BS out there. And one of them was that I had to correct was I had heard not from my grandpa, but from other family members that his dad, my great grandpa, was a sheriff or a deputy for Wyatt Earp in Tucson.
Oh, that's cool.
And so which is cool. Yeah. But I learned that Wyatt Earp was pretty much done in Arizona at around like 1885, and my family didn't. They didn't come down to like 1900.
Wow.
So I was like, well, okay, well that's not true. Yeah. But I did verify that my great grandpa was a deputy sheriff in Tombstone, but just not it was after
just without that overlap. So
yeah,
okay,
yeah.
I'm sure there were plenty of badass of individuals outside of Wyatt who didn't make a name for themselves.
And I've got a little evidence here. This is something I've been excited to show you. Okay. Is that this is my first, for those listening, this is my first rifle. This is the first gun that I technically ever owned. I grew up shooting. My dad loved shooting. So like incidentally, my dad loved shooting, but he wasn't much of a hunter. But my grandpa, my mom's dad, was just big time hunter.
Okay.
So anyway, so this is um, so whenever we would visit my grandpa, because my grandpa, we lived in Tucson. He ended up, again, he grew up Southeast Arizona. He got to a point with his business where he could kind of pseudo retire, and he was super stoked to get back to Southern Arizona where he grew up hunting and all that. And then as kids, we would go and visit grandpa all the time. And he had a 40-acre spread. He had this massive, like, I mean, I think his garden was like a full acre.
That's awesome.
Just as, and he had horses and just out in the middle of nowhere, like completely off grid.
Yeah.
And
Basically
just,
Mexico, Arizona. Yeah.
Hey, hunters. Have you ever had one of those stories, the ones that you didn't want to tell, the ones that end in failure? Yeah, I've been there. Actually, you know what? The culprit for me usually is bad optics, or worse, lack of using my optics at all. Picture this. I spot a trophy buck, or an antelope, or an elk, whatever it may be. My heart is racing, but the blurry view, or I just can't quite identify exactly what I'm looking at, it has me second guessing. Well, that's where Vortex Optics comes in. With crystal clear glass and rugged durability, Vortex gives you the confidence to take the shot. Don't let poor optics ruin your story. Make every moment count. Upgrade to Vortex and turn your hunting tales into triumphs. Visit vortexoptics.com today.
Yeah. So we'd go visit that all the time, and then eventually and I remember every time that we'd go visit Grandpa, he had all these rifles and guns underneath his bed, and my brother and I would be like, "Grandpa, can we see your guns?" And so every visit, he'd like have to pull the guns out and tell old stories and blah 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 all over again. We just like totally loved it.
Yeah.
So we moved. So it sucks for my dad because he ended up getting laid off from a pretty good job, but they decided, well, the 40-acre plot next to my grandpa's 40-acre plot out there became available, so my parents moved us out there to that plot. So,
Okay.
which kind of sucked for my dad in hindsight. We didn't know at the time, but it was such an awesome experience for us kids because like we grew up out there. So anyway, so that's kind of where my hunting starts. So I'm going to come back to this rifle. So my grandpa, again, this is one of the guns that we'd always nerd out on whenever we go visit. And so when I was 10, and I should probably say that there was this awesome Mauser action that my grandpa's brother, who was a gunsmith, his oldest brother, rebarreled in 30-06, and he carved like this custom wood stock, like he had my grandpa put it up and carved it away for cheek and everything. So he gave that gun to my brother, and then he gave this little Model 94 30-30 to me, and it's amazing. So, anyways, I'm going to tell you a little bit about this gun. So my first gun. So it's a 94. It's a Model 94 Winchester.
That's beautiful. That's like one of my dream guns right there, man. That's amazing.
Yeah. So, and again, I'm going to make sure I don't propagate any false, stories here, because I remember being told by other family members that this gun came across Texas with the family and was with my great grandpa. But anyways, looking up the serial number on this, it was made in 1912, so which would have been after they came over. But so this would have been my great grandpa's gun that he would have bought when he was probably like 30, 31.
Okay.
Anyways, now. So I remember as a kid when we were nerding out over this gun, we'd look at it. And I'm going to show you if I could get it in the camera here.
I see it.
Do you see all these little file notches?
I do.
You see all? Okay. So when I was a kid, I remember asking my grandpa, and that one's not showing up real well, but so if you could kind of see, there's like a whole array of notches there, a bunch of bigger notches there, and then a few notches here. So I remember as a kid, I was asking my grandpa, I was like, "Grandpa, what are all these notches in there?" And he's like, "Well, the little notches are deer, and I counted them for you. There's 34 little notches in this for deer." And he's like, and the bigger notches are elk, and there's 13 of them. And I was like, "Oh, sick." And then there's these two off angle notches.
Yeah.
That, if you could kind of see them there. So I was like, well, Grandpa, what about those angle notches? And that's when he's like, well, my dad was a deputy and deputy sheriff in Tombstone. He's like, so those are bad guys. I'm like, no way, dude. That's sick. So that's the notches on the gun. But a couple cool things like my you can see a normal 94 has the magazine tube that comes all the way out to the end of the barrel.
Mm-hmm.
But so the story goes that my great uncle Earl, the gunsmith, he was hunting with this gun and was hiking around and ended up tripping and stuffing the end of the barrel into a rock, and the gun goes off. So it blew out the barrel, and it kind of damaged the magazine tube. But good thing he's a gunsmith, so he just trims the barrel a little bit, cuts back the magazine tube, so it's like it could, it holds one round less. But he fixed it, everything like that. So you can see like this little notch where the barrel clamp should have been.
That's pretty cool. Anyways, that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Like, if it happens to anybody else, that gun's gone, but your grandpa was able to turn it into a one-of-a-kind family heirloom.
My grandpa always filed the sights down on his gun, like he filed like that blade. So I'm pointing again at the camera, but
it's okay.
He would.
I feel safe enough.
Yeah. So he files the blade way down to kind of make it real fine, because my grandpa was like a crazy shot, like no joke. I've seen my grandpa shoot birds out of the air with a 22.
No shit.
While they're flying. So, no, I've seen
extremely unsafe, grandpa. Come on, man.
Yeah, well, no doubt. I would not recommend that to my kids. Maybe some discretion if you're letting your kids listen to this. Don't let your kids. But we did live like way out in the middle of nowhere, so obviously not a lot of risk there.
Yeah,
but you are right.
But impressive. Impressive.
Don't. Yeah. So anyway, so when we move out there, so like I said, my grandpa had like this Fort Knox garden, like acre big, 7-foot fence to keep the deer out. We trenched it 18 inches with cement to keep the gophers out, and that was my grandpa's thing. Like he's his pseudo retirement, he just worked that garden, just freaking loved it. So grandpa would kind of getting into like David and I, my brother, our hunting is, grandpa would post us up at corners of his garden, and kill time we would just shoot birds and whatever was trying to get in his garden. So we started like loving that, and again, the freedom of all that land. We start roaming around. Oh, and by this time my dad had given my brother and I both a couple of Ruger 10/22s. So we kind of got into it. So I know this is like kind of not as like glamorous as big game hunting, but we had such a ball, like killing rabbits and all the small game stuff. It's such a fun, like kind of defining thing in my childhood. Like, cause we would just like, so what we started doing is like, we start running around all the land out there, and we start, chasing rabbits, killing. So we kind of created, looking back, it's funny, cause we kind of created our own like method of how to hunt a rabbit, which really doesn't make any sense to a lot of people now. But what we would do is we'd sneak around the bushes, and then the rabbit would take off, and probably now a lot of normal people would be like, well, if you ain't got a dog or whatever, and that rabbit's gone, you ain't going after it. So my brother and I, in our youth and all this energy, we would just chase rabbits. We just start hauling ass after all these rabbits, and we kind of span out and kind of try to corral the rabbit, and it's darting between bushes and trying to find cover and whatever, and we just keep it moving. And then we started kind of getting pretty good at hunting rabbits, and that was like our thing. We'd go to school, and then any chance we got, we would just go out and just shoot shoot up the desert. So
it's like a deer drive, except rabbit drive.
Yeah, dude, it was funny because we'd have our cousins. So we'd have our cousins come over, and once we would talk about like, oh, dude, we love hunting, killing rabbits, and blah blah. So they would come out and they'd bring a shotgun. And Dave and I remember our reaction was like, well, I guess you could use a shotgun. I guess that makes sense. You could, but then it almost was like, this is probably like kind of akin to like the rifle archery debate, because like them, we'd run out and they blast a rabbit with a shotgun, and we're like, well, that was too easy, bro. It's like, come on.
Yeah.
So I'll just get through a couple of these funny. So anyways, that's the context. We just love freaking chasing rabbits, and as kids, just a couple of dumb, energetic kids running around. Luckily, again, we're running full tilt loaded guns, and luckily nothing ever happened, safety wise. So yeah. So okay, so I got 3 just kind of quick funny stories for our little rabbit hunting glory days. We got so kind of early on, my our MO was like, and my dad was awesome because anytime that we wanted 22 shells, like Dad would come home with a brick of 22 shells. I mean, we didn't have a ton of money, but if we ever told Dad we were out of shells, then he'd bring home a brick of shells. So we were well supplied on ammo.
Yeah.
And then so our MO was we would just grab a handful of 22 shells, throw them in our pocket, and then once we were done, once we had shot all that up, then we go home. So kind of early on in our rabbit hunting days, we had one day we were out. I had blown through all my ammo, and David we hooked back up, and he's like, yeah, I'm out too. Let's go back home. He's like, dude, I just got 1 round in my gun, and that's it. So he got 1 round in his gun. We're walking back, not hunting, and this little cottontail just bolts between David and I and starts running directly behind us. Yeah. And David just swings his gun, shoots from the hip, thinking like, I've got 1 round. I'm not really trying to kill this rabbit. But I'll throw a shot at it. So, boom, hits this rabbit in the friggin' throat, which is funny because everybody knows that rabbits scream and all that. And in all of, in our time of hunting, killed a good number of rabbits there. I'd never heard a rabbit scream. We knew it did because we go calling with my grandpa, and hear him call, but I had never heard a rabbit scream. So sure enough, the first time that we hear a rabbit scream is this rabbit that David just freaking blew out his voice box.
God.
So this rabbit is doing the most like he's trying to scream and the voice crack, blood garble.
Goodness.
It was so
it's like a horror movie.
It was terrible. And Dave and I were like, we are terrible people. So we're like, well, freak, now we got to like kill this rabbit. We got to get this, get this rabbit out of his misery. So, but we're like a couple of skinny kids and not way much. So we first go over and try stepping on this rabbit's head, like try to crush the skull. And like, dude, this thing is not going to die. Like I feel the vibration of his scream like through my boot. And it's just like, oh my gosh, like, this is terrible. So we end up, long story short, trying a bunch. I ended up having to get a rock. We threw it at this thing's head. It's still screaming underneath the rock. I have to like jump on the rock and I feel its little skull crush. And I was just like, oh my gosh, like that's terrible. So we decided that day, I'm like, dude, okay, no matter what, we have to keep a reserve of 5 rounds in the pocket. Once we get to 5 rounds, we're done hunting. Because if something like that ever happens again, we need to be able to dispatch something. Yeah. That happens there. So anyways, that was kind of fun.
That's a little horror story right there, man.
Yeah, it's a little gnarly. Yeah. For
kids. I've found some animals. I wasn't even hunting, but I had to put them down by stepping on their skulls. It's not fun, but it's
it's not cool.
A little squirrel one time, and it hit by a car or fell out of a tree, but its back legs weren't working, and it was trying to crawl. And I was like, "Sorry, man, little man." Yeah. I was like, "Goodbye."
Yeah,
it is what it is.
Yeah, that's what you got. Yeah. One of those stories that maybe you don't tell some of the more left-leaning people because they think you're horrible.
I don't know how many of those people listen, so we'll just keep going.
Yeah. So another funny one is, I remember this was kind of early on too. There's this rabbit, this bigger jackrabbit was running away, and I pull up, go to shoot him while he's running, and boom, right ear pops off. Just the whole ear just popped right off. So I was like, holy freak, dude! I was like halfway surprised that it would do that, but it was just like, man, this whole. So I remember I got home and I'm telling my grandpa and my dad, and we're like, dude, I just shot this ear off, this rabbit, and they're like, oh well, I mean, that kind of sucks the rabbit because he ain't gonna survive because they use those ears for cooling and sound and all that. And I was just like, oh, so I'm like feeling bad. I was like, oh dang it, man, but it's just kind of funny because like. This is like 2 years later. I'm on the bus, and the bus is bouncing around through the woods, and I'm just like staring out the window of the bus, just kind of, off in thought. And out of the middle of, like, underneath the bus runs this one-eared jackrabbit. And it was like 2 years later, I was like, "Oh, sitting rabbit! I shot that guy!" Like, so I'm like freaking out, and all the kids on the bus were like, "What?" And like, "Did you see that rabbit?" Like, and then I was like, "Do I admit to all these kids I blew this year's rabbit off, or do I just end the story here?"
So,
yeah. So, anyways, that was kind of fun. Okay, so last like rabbit story here, and then we'll move on to maybe other stuff. Yeah. So we were there from when the time I was like 10 till I was about 16.
okay.
And so I remember for the first few years we there was this one rabbit out there. We called him Trophy Rabbit because he was just this massive jackrabbit.
Yeah.
Yeah. So he and we had always run into him and do this thing as fast because, like I said, we could kind of keep up and corral a lot of other rabbits. But this guy, if we saw this guy, it's like we knew it instantly. It's like, there's freaking Trophy Rabbit, because he was just huge and he would just take off.
Yeah.
And no chance of catching him. So we're like, so again, the few years that we're there, we're like, dude, freaking Trophy Rabbit's gonna get it someday. We gotta get this guy. So finally, after a few years, we sneak around this bush, and Trophy Rabbit takes off from this bush, and we're kind of close now. So we're like, all right, dude. So we're hauling ass, just full sprint, trying to keep up with this rabbit. And we're coming to this little hill off the side of my grandpa's house. And we're just trying to keep up with him. And we get to the top of this hill, and we look down, and rabbit is just way down there, at the bottom of the hill. And we're just like, freak, dude. Yeah, you got us a trophy. Yeah. So my brother pulls up, and my brother just decides, they're standing there a little defeated, watching this rabbit, run down through the bushes away from us. And then he stops in this clearing. It seems like way down there. I've told the story before, like, oh, he's like 200 yards away. We pulled up Onyx to fact check, and it was probably about 100 yards.
It's still pretty good. Still pretty good distance.
Yeah, 22. Open sight 22 while you've been huffing and trying to, So anyways, Trophy Rabbit stops in this little clearing. David goes to pull up his gun, and I'm sitting there, no way, bro, you're not gonna hit that thing. Boom, cracks a shot, hits this rabbit. And then instantly we're just jacked, like, holy freak, he just hit this rabbit. So we start like running down this hill. It's a fairly steep little hill. And I remember like just literally jumping over bushes. Like, we're just so jacked, like running and jump over. So we get down there, this rabbit's all thrashing around. We shoot him, and get him killed. And then we're just stoked. I mean, I'm probably like 13 years old, and I'm holding this rabbit by the base of his ears. And I got my arm at about a 90, and his feet are dragging on the ground.
No way. So was he just a freak, or was he a different species? Like snowshoe hares are massive, but I don't know.
So jackrabbits, there's that whole is a hare, not a rabbit, whatever. But there's plenty of little cottontails around, and there's jackrabbits all around, so we'd see them both. But this rabbit, well, again, from the first time that we ever saw him years before, like, dude, this rabbit is freaking huge.
Yeah.
So anyways, so we drag him. So I'm 6'3". I wasn't that tall back then, obviously, but I'm like dragging this rabbit, like, and so we triumphantly walk up to Granny and Grandpa's house, and they're like, dude, we got Trophy Rabbit, and tell parents and everybody. So anyways, that was just super fun. Yeah. So thanks for indulging me on a couple of.
I love it, man. I don't know. We've had like one rabbit story in like 130 episodes, so it's fun to get a couple more.
Yeah.
And I think the one that we had was this gentleman. He's like, his dad used to shoot rabbits, and he'd throw them in the back of the truck, and then like apparently he didn't kill them, so he went to the bar, came back, and his truck full of like rabbits that were running around.
How do you do that? I mean, rabbits. I guess rabbits, if they get scared, they'll kind of go into shock and like kind of faint.
Yeah.
And then a lot of times it'll kill them, but anyways, they'll kind of faint. And so I guess that's believable.
Yeah. Here's some questions I have for you, just because I'm interested in rabbit hunting as an adult, and I've always heard you got to wait till the first freeze. Were you just doing this year round? Didn't matter if it was cold, not cold.
Are you ready to elevate your archery game? Summit Bowstrings delivers premium strings for all archers, crafted with bloodline fiber and BCY material stretched for unmatched consistency. Choose from 3 series: Hunter, Competition, and Summit. Each string is built bison tough with unique techniques for extreme durability and performance. Ideal for both seasoned hunters and target archers. Experienced strings designed to handle any challenge. Visit summitbowstrings.com and use HSP10 for a 10% discount.
Unregulated.
Yeah, I figured. Little kid. It's what it is. It is a little kid in the middle of nowhere. It is what it is. Did you eat them?
We got no coaching. We would eat a lot of them for sure.
Okay.
We ended up, maybe it's our reputation spread a bit, so that like chili farmers would pay us to go shoot rabbits off of their farm.
Yeah.
So we would give them the rabbits we shot, and they'd pay us like a quarter a rabbit. Not that he needed to pay us; we would have done it anyways. But anyways, so we would eat a lot. Now it's fair to say we killed way more than we ate.
Yeah, you ever see any like gross parasites? Because I've heard that's it. It's like they've got bugs on them and parasites and all sorts of crazy stuff.
Yeah, it's like bear. You'd have to cook it real well and clean it and cook it real well and all that. But yeah. So
okay, cool.
Anyways.
All right, well, let's keep going, man. These are great.
Yeah. So I got two more fun stories from when, and these are the ones I kind of ran by you before that are not necessarily hunting stories, but again, this is when we still lived out there, way out in the middle of nowhere. So like I said, we had a 40-acre plot next to our grandpa's 40-acre plot, and then no neighbors really that lived, I think my closest buddy lived like 5 miles away. Okay. So, but there was guys that leased land for cattle and all that. So every once in a while we'd have some dude's cattle that would bust down our fence and get onto our spread. And it always seemed to happen like when we're at school or whatever. And so then we get home from school, we got to go saddle up the horses and push them out and all that. So it was, it was kind of a pain in the butt. So I remember one morning I'm getting ready for school, and where our house was at, we're up on this hill, and and if you looked like a couple of miles down the road, we could see the school bus turn off the main road and go. So that was kind of like my last minute alarm clock. I'd procrastinate, and then I'd be like, "Oh, freak! There's the school bus. Better get going." So I remember one of these mornings, I'm checking for the bus. I see the bus, but then I look down, and on the other corner of our plot, some cattle had just busted into our busted down the fence, and we're sitting. There's like maybe about 30-40 head of cattle on like right inside the fence, and then so I'm sitting there like, freak, the bus is coming. Obviously got no time to do anything about these cattle, and by the time we get home, we're gonna have to spend a couple hours trying to get them pushed out. So in my like 12, 13-year-old brain, I come up with this idea. I was like, well, okay, so here's the fence, and here's this group of cattle that are right off the side of the fence, and there's this one other cow that's kind of just off the main group, and it's facing the group of cattle, and then the fence. So my brain, I was like, you know what? If I got my 22 and I send it out and I hit that cow, then maybe he'll freak out, spook, and push and bump all the cattle and get them off of our land. So and save us some headache when I get home. So I'm thinking like, oh, this is a great plan. So I run into the house and I grab my 22. And by the time I actually get my hands on my 22 in the house, I'm coming back out and I'm like, dude, you're retarded. This is like, there's no way. This is a dumb idea. This is a really dumb idea.
Second guessing your brilliant idea.
Yeah. So I'm like, well, you know what? I've already got the gun. Yeah. I might as well throw a shot. So I brace off the side of the house. Now, again, when I fact check myself, I would always tell the people like, oh, these cattle are about a quarter mile away. Again, on X, I zoomed it, and so legit, it was 330 yards. Yeah. So that's the actual number. So I sit there and I brace off the side of the house and I line up on that one cow that I'm thinking, okay, my plan is to hit that cow, and if it works, then we're set. So I aim at this cow, bracing off the side of the house, and I give it a ton of elevation. I'm like, okay, all right, cool. I'm lined up on it. I walk it way up, and I send a shot, and I'm like, and I drop my rifle, and I'm looking, and about enough time has passed for me to be like, of course, dude, you're not gonna hit that cow. Then boom, that cow just starts hind legs, rear up, freaks out, and I was like, holy freak, at this cow. So not only did my plan, not only did I hit the freaking cow, but my plan actually worked. Yeah. He freaks out, spooks the cattle. They run off the fence. He follows them, and we get home, and there's no cattle on our spread. So I was like,
win-win. So, minus the ass, like the the like
Yeah.
pussy abscess from the wound in the back of that cow's leg.
Because in my mind, I'm like, dude, it's not going to kill. Obviously, I'm not going to kill it, you
Yeah.
know. And I'm in my head, I was like, thick hide. It probably won't even break his hide. So hopefully that didn't happen.
Yeah.
But we'll see.
Yeah.
But yeah, that maybe in the hereafter we'll review that one and see what happened to that cow.
Yeah. Now you got to start checking that. Okay, that's funny,
Yeah,
man.
yeah.
But it's, I mean, as a
Yeah.
12-year-old, it's pretty innovative, right?
Yeah,
I like it.
Yeah. For you parents listening out there, maybe teach your kids to have better discretion than that.
Yeah, don't be like Kevin.
Don't be like that. Okay, so my last kind of fun story from that era of my life was we had this so on our 40-acre spread we had this creek running through and had all these ash and maple trees growing on this creek, and so we had fun. We started a tree house in this big maple tree, and I think it was an ash tree, but who cares? So we had just during the summer we had just got to where we built the platform on where the tree branched out.
Okay.
So we had built this platform, and then we had just made this kind of like this little rope ladder thing to kind of get on it. And then by the end of the summer, once it started getting cold down there, because this is like southeast Arizona, like 4,500 high desert, so it gets a little cold. Here, are you still in Colorado, or did you make it to Texas?
Colorado. I went down to Texas and then back up to Colorado. So.
Oh, got it. Sweet. So yeah, so I'm not trying to complain about the cold that you guys in Colorado.
No,
but,
it's always, as long as it's sunny here, it's not cold. That's all. You just got to have some sunshine.
Yeah.
Probably there too, right? With the elevation, just that sun warms you up so quick.
Oh yeah, it's great. No, I love it. Yeah. We've moved up to a little bit colder area of Arizona, but yeah, down there it was not too bad. Yeah. So, but it got cold enough where we just kind of weren't super motivated to go work on the treehouse all winter. So spring rolls around and we're like, oh, let's go work on the treehouse. So we get a handful of wood, nails, and whatever. And so we start hiking down, and we get close enough. And it's my brother and my little sister with us, and me being the more competitive younger brother. We get close to the treehouse, and I've got to be the first one to get into the treehouse. So I run down, and I start shuffling up this little rope ladder, and I hear this growl.
Oh,
and I look up, and it was a mountain lion that was sleeping in our treehouse.
No, shit.
So, dude, and I could tell he was sleeping because when I looked up from on this ladder, like there's the platform of the treehouse, and his head literally rolled off of the edge to the edge of this treehouse. Yeah. It wasn't like he was standing on the platform. Literally, like his head rolls off, and then he's like looking at me, and I'm like, I mean, no joke. I'm close enough where I literally could have reached up and slapped this thing in the face if I wanted to.
Good God.
But I am just froze on this ladder, like staring at this mountain lion looking at me, and I'm just like, what the freak am I going to do? So I'm sitting there just frozen, and I'm like, I'm trying to process, like, what do I do? Like I'm scared of my mind, and so luckily David was coming down the wash. And he looks up and he sees me all freaked out, just frozen. And he yells, he's like, Kevin, what's wrong? Luckily that spooked the lion.
Oh, he didn't see the lion. He just saw you just like.
Oh, he didn't. No, he just saw me frozen on this rope, looking up and like staring and not moving. So he just yells, Kevin, what's wrong? And my little sister Terry was right behind him. So they're coming down the wash and they see me. He yells, what's wrong? Luckily that spooks the lion. But they got a little bit of a freak show too, because the lion jumps out of the treehouse. It's however high up it was, and it lands like 10 feet in front of David. So they see this lion sailing out of the treehouse. So they're all of a sudden like,
how high is the platform, and how high are you up the rope?
So we're actually the tree was so there's this wash, like there's a creek and a little wash that fed into it. So they're walking down the bed of the wash. So from the wash to the edge of the like where the tree was growing was probably a good 3-4 feet. Okay. And then the platform was probably a good 10 feet up in the tree.
Okay, got it.
So yeah, there's a good 10, 15 feet that thing sails out of the air, lands in the wash right in front of my brother and my sister.
Jumping over you.
Yeah. Well, it was like they're looking like the tree is closer to them, and I'm just past I'm off to the side of the tree.
Okay.
So they're looking at the tree. They could see me to the left, and the lion just
Gotcha. Okay,
jumps
so it
out.
went kind of away from you when it heard
Yeah.
them and ended up going towards them. All right, still terrifying.
Yeah,
I was just
yeah.
waiting to hear that you said
Oh.
like your sister sees the cat and goes, pss, 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 here, kitty.
Yeah. Sure. Oh, this is Tom. He's my friend. I feed him every day.
Oh my
kind of thing.
goodness, Jesus.
Yeah. So it sails off, tears out into the grass, and then they were obviously a little freaked out too. So we're all just standing there, just like wide-eyed, like, oh my gosh, what just happened?
Yeah.
So anyways, that was a fun close encounter.
Goodness gracious. I've never
mountain lion.
run into a mountain lion. We got plenty of them here, but I've never had the pleasure. We'll say.
I think I've seen 3. So obviously that was my first encounter with a mountain lion. Obviously that was the closest. I remember one time walking back from my grandparents' house. It was kind of right at dusk, and you know how that could kind of play with sound and a little bit weird.
Sure.
So I remember walking the road from back to my house, and I hear this thump, 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 and I'm like, oh man, something's running. So I stop, and I'm just trying to figure out what's going on. And then I see this big jackrabbit pop out from a bush and is running for his life. And in my brain, now first I'm like, that's kind of loud for a jackrabbit. And then right after that, this lion is just full tilt, just going. Still, muscles rippling, and it was super cool looking. And that was maybe about like 20 yards in front of me. So
that's cool.
Saw that.
I've had some amazing mountain lion stories on the podcast. I don't know if you or the listeners, if you guys want some good mountain lion ones, Eric Boone's episode, I don't know what number it is, but Eric Boone, he has one where he pulls a gun on a cougar and 5 inches from the end of his barrel to that cougar's face. And I won't tell you why or how that all went down, but it's a gnarly story. And then if you're familiar with Cliff Gray, I had him on the podcast, and he told one story, and it was a crazy story and a whole bunch of things. And I'm like, why would you do that, Cliff? But it's an awesome mountain lion story.
I'm gonna write that one down.
Those two, Cliff Gray, Eric Boone, stand out for sure. And I've had a couple of hound guys on, and I've even got a standing offer to go actually with them, not hunting, but just like go out, see the dogs work, see get a mountain lion treat, which I really want to do, because man, I would love to see one of those critters. They just house cats scare me, so if I'm a mountain lion, right? Whew.
Imagine this. You're deep in the wilderness. The sun is rising, casting golden light over rugged terrain. Your heart races as you navigate through the backcountry, knowing the perfect shot could come at any moment. This is where memories are made and stories are born. Ultralight rifles are often seen as Mountain West guns, but the Ridgeline FFT from Christensen Arms breaks that mold. This stellar, lightweight rifle is your perfect companion, whether you're in the backcountry or box blind, ensuring you never have to switch between your builds. With its aero-grade carbon fiber barrel and stock, the Ridgeline FFT is incredibly lightweight, yet powerful. Thanks to its innovative side baffle brake, it reduces recoil even on a 5-pound gun shooting magnum calibers. It's like black magic. As a sub-MOA tack driver made in America, the Ridgeline FFT is for those who seek the thrill of the hunt and the joy of storytelling. Picture yourself returning to camp, Ridgeline FFT in hand, ready to share the day's adventures. Head to your local shop, pick one up. You've got to feel this rifle to believe it. Let the Ridgeline FFT be part of your hunting stories and the legacy you pass down.
Because that was the thing, like after the treehouse thing, I don't know, it was like once it's done, like and the cat's running off and you can't hear him anymore, and your heart, you could kind of come down from the high. That then it was like this image of this cat and having that close of a look, and I still see the eyes and the detail in the eyes, and because they're kind of expressionless, so just that. I remember laying in bed that night still being just like, that was like the coolest thing I ever seen.
Yeah.
Totally freaked out at the time.
Glad I'm alive.
I was like, oh yeah, it was so cool. So yeah.
Yeah, that was a great one, man. All of these kid stories. Do you have any adult stories, or you just have the kid ones? Okay. Yeah. First off, these have all been phenomenal. Even just the herding the cattle was great. So keep going, man.
Yeah. These are like the ones that, when I told my kids I was going to be on the podcast, they're like, well, you're going to tell that. You're going to tell those ones, like, the fun ones I tell. So I was like, yeah, they're fun.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm going to kind of skip the bird hunting phase because, I absolutely loved, like, yeah, again, this is now college, training a dog, and had so many memorable, super fun things. Like
Yeah.
I still tell people, like I would love, and like when I get old and slow down, I'd love to have like a kennel and train dogs and go back to bird hunting. So I would totally be about that. But I just did. I was racking my brain. I was like, I don't have like good like classic stories from that. So we'll skip that.
Okay.
Then so yeah, so once we kind of business with Gibbs Arms slows down enough where we could kind of get back into hunting. Um, and so we had a couple of, definitely had the benefit of having a lot of friends that were really experienced, really great big game hunters.
Yeah.
So it had a lot of good coaching and just had a lot of fun. So we kind of dived into it pretty hard. And did pretty well for considering that we hadn't done it as much all growing up. But I got into archery. I kind of tease people. I own you know I own a gun company, but I'm kind of more excited to go shoot my bow than. So I bit the archery bug pretty hard.
Dude,
So
you either have no interest or you go pretty deep, and then you just hope you don't go too deep into the tinkering because there's unlimited options. I started down that tinkering path, and I was like, no, I'm gonna get myself in trouble. I'm gonna run out of money.
Yeah.
I'm just gonna set up a bow setup, and I'm gonna enjoy the process and not stop myself from tinkering.
Yeah. I mean, coming from the gun world, it's like I thought there was a lot of black magic, voodoo, and guns, but dude, blown away when I got into started getting into archery.
Yeah.
Now, unfortunately, and my wife is super patient. I'm that guy where I'm like, I'm going to fletch my own arrows. I'm going to build, I get a bow press and I do my own tuning and blah, blah, blah. So like I've gone kind of nuts on it.
That's awesome.
So
I've thought about it. They're on my Amazon wish list in case someone wanted to, but
yeah. No, I mean, that's great. Really good. You can depend on good dudes at a bow shop and they'll set you up and you don't have to do all that,
Yeah.
but it's just fun. Just the, I don't know, the tinker engineer in me loves to kind of dive into all the weeds of it. So
Yeah.
super fun. So I kind of wanted to, I guess, how are we doing on time?
We're good. I mean, I got about another, I would say 45 minutes before I got to jump, but I'll listen as long as you'll tell me, man.
Okay. No, I think we should be good.
Okay.
Might use all that, but
all right, we'll see.
If you're cool with that. So I kind of want to skip ahead to my because being older and already having kids, and I felt like I wasn't that dad for a while that felt comfortable, like being able to actually show my kids what to do. So I had like this learning process of my own. So now that we hunted with a lot of great dudes, and again, Eric is the best hunter that I know. He's amazing.
Yeah.
And super, he's a really good guy, just an amazing hunter. And I kind of connected with some buddies I had in college that also were really good. And so had a lot of fun. And so now we're kind of getting into where like, okay, well now I can get the kids out. Like let's get my kids hunting. And my oldest daughter, Hallie, she absolutely loves hunting. She's that kid that really loves it and wants it so bad. Hasn't had the greatest amount of success. She's killed a turkey. We had a really fun turkey hunt, but she missed on a buck on her first deer tag. And right now she's 20.
Okay.
Yeah, she's 20. She's playing volleyball for college down in Mesa.
Awesome,
so
man.
yeah, but she loves it. She's nerds out at it too. So my next two girls 2 years ago drew a youth mule deer tags in alpine area of Arizona. It's close to where we live now. So it's not in a lot of my big game hunting's been in that area of Arizona. So anyways, they draw tags together, and so we get them out, and then first night of our hunt, we get in and find a pretty good. And actually, Eric came down from Utah and helped us out with this hunt. So it's me and Eric and my two girls, and so we find this this group of bucks, bucks and a few does. This is I think a late November hunt. So we find this kind of group of bucks and deer had come up from this cut, major elevation drop. They come up to this cut, and we kind of find them in there. And so we get my second daughter Marilee lined up on this buck, and again, her first buck. We had taken her out shooting plenty of times, and first buck, and I think it's only like 150 yards, and I'm trying to, and again, I don't have the most experience with like coaching the kid and all that. I've killed a few of my own, but it's not like I'm super experienced. So I'm trying to kind of coach and like keep her calm, me stay calm, help try her keep calm, and she's struggling to find it a little bit, and then she finds it, ends up shooting and misses this buck, and interesting thing, it was a nice like wide three, still in velvet, and and so we end up she ends up missing that buck. We end up kind of following the group a little bit. Ends up not making anything else happen that day. So she's like, a little bit shaky and like, oh, we're like, no, it's cool, you're good. Everybody, almost everybody misses their first buck. You're good. So so we go back and we hunt for a couple. So it turns out 2 days later we come back, and we had checked other areas, but we would always come back and check this draw, and ended up seeing the same group of deer. And we could tell it's the same because, like, there's two unique bucks. There was this wide three, it's still in velvet, and then there was a fairly tall, narrow four that in that group with a couple other smaller bucks and some does. So we end up getting on this group, and we move in. We're set up at about 300 yards. Not really feeling good about the shot, and Marilee's like couldn't quite get into a position she felt good. So we end up having to follow them as they followed up over to this other cut. We crest this hill. It is starting to rain, and so Eric and my other daughter Sarah are following us. Me and Marilee are kind of leading the way, cresting this, and then we see across the way in about 300 yards there's this group of deer. And then, so luckily there was a lot of deadfall that made it easy to kind of prop that rifle down and sit down. And so we got eyes on these deer, and but with enough rain, and she's like, Dad, the scope's fogging up a little bit. So we kind of wipe it. And then we're struggling enough to get her on where I'm starting to kind of wonder, like, oh, dude, is this going to happen? Like, so luckily then she finally is like, hey, Dad, I got it. I'm on him. So I'm like, okay, cool. Which one you want? She's like, yeah, I'm on that wide three. And I was like, sick. So I was like, all right, if you feel good, so boom, she shoots, you hear the impact. It's kind of getting dark, hear the impact. And we're like, okay, you dropped him. Like, we saw the deer, Eric, we saw that deer go down. Awesome. Other deer. And then the deer kind of bounce over a little bit, but end up kind of not moving too far. So we actually lined Sarah up on the same setup, and again, it kind of threw it on her. So she's not, Marilee just shot. So she's kind of like, not really like, and thinking that but I'm like, Sarah, get over here. Like, there's that tall four, shoot that guy. So she lines up and gets, so she gets set up and she's on it. And again, same, a little bit of a struggle. You find it in the scope with the rain and everything. And so she ends up shooting and misses that buck. And so, now I got one really bummed child, the one really super stoked child.
So you're trying to understand both their emotions, work with both of them. It's a tough place to be right in the middle of that.
So, yeah, and not that Sarah was still like stoked for Marilee, so it wasn't too bad. But it was just like, okay. So we make our way over there. We ended up not. He ran it. He ended up getting up and scooting a little bit further away than we thought. So we ended up not finding him that night. Came back the next morning early and came into that draw. There's a bunch of crows making noise. So we're like, okay, obviously that deer's down there. So we go down, find that deer, take care of it. It's awesome. So now we're shifting mode back to try to get Sarah tagged out. And so we work a couple of different areas and kind of keep coming back to check this area that, see it was good. So anyways, we go back and then so the day after Marilee shot her buck, we're in this different area, and we find this other group of deer, and there's a smaller like I think he was probably only 2.
Okay.
Those smaller buck, but he's with this group, and so we kind of sneak in and get to where where we saw him move in a certain direction, so we kind of worked in a way to kind of get in front of them, posted up. They ended up kind of slipping and going around us, and then we caught them going the other way. So then we kind of shift spots, go back. And again, it's kind of getting toward the end of light, and it's kind of cold. I think we had started getting a little snow. And so we set up on this other direction, and we see that, a couple hundred yards off, they're in this tree line and this whole group of deer. So So we're getting Sarah set up, and this is just kind of like a good moment for Sarah because she's trying to be calm. She's already missed, and she's does a pretty good job of getting that out of her head and trying to be in the moment. But so she's lining up, and then man, this buck we were probably looking at this buck for 30 minutes, and we'd be like, oh hey Sarah, okay, he's starting to move. He's going to step out behind that doe, probably give you a shot. Boom, doe follows him, something like.
Yeah.
Never given a shot. And then all of a sudden, might get a little bit of a window, and Sarah's like, okay, I'm kind of getting lined up. She's barely getting comfortable where she can feel good about a shot. Deer moves, gets behind a tree. So it was literally 30 minutes of this buck just kind of ducking in behind cover, giving tiny little windows, not enough time to shoot. And so light runs out. And so then Sarah just starts crying. She's just like, Dad, like, should I have shot that? I had a couple windows. I'm like, no, you did the right thing. Like, you got to feel good about a shot. So she was a little sad. Did I mess up? Should I have done something better? Was I too slow? And so just kind of reassuring her, like, no, you did the right thing. No, this is hunting. This is how it goes. So, so I felt like it was a good experience for her to kind of work through that.
Yeah.
But then. The next day, Eric and the two of us go out, and we kind of like, well, we're always seeing deer in this one cut. Let's go back and check. So we go back in and we start working this road on the kind of the spine of the ridge that we've been seeing and working. And then we start working, and then Eric looks off to our right, and he's like, oh dude, those deer are right there. I think we had actually saw them a little bit that morning. They moved up, and that's why we kind of went down that ridge. And so we kind of knew they could have been up there. And then worked one ridge, didn't quite see anything, came back, worked this other ridge, and boom, that's when Eric sees these deer. Okay. So we're getting her set up, and it was just cool because Marilee, her older sister, just all of a sudden stepped in as like coach, like, hey Sarah, you got this, like just lock in. And so Sarah's set up on this tripod, and by the way, it's the same four, it's the same tall narrow four.
Okay.
So right when I'm about to go into kind of like coach mode, try to calm her down, and again last night she's a little bit like thinking that maybe she screwed stuff up. So Marilee steps in there, and she just starts calling her down, like talking to like, no, Sarah, you got it. Like, you got where you're going to aim. You got it. Okay, cool. You stable? You good? Your heart rate good? You breathing? And, she's just like, and Sarah's like, yeah, I got it. Yeah. And then boom, dumps this deer. So we run over there and just, super excited, like just loving it. But it's interesting because when I tell the story, I always say, it's like, dude, it's crazy that both of them missed on the same deer that they ended up killing 2 days later. It was like, Marilee missed 2 days later, shot that wide 3. That night, Sarah missed 2 days later. Sarah shot the same deer that she missed on.
That's crazy.
So it's kind of a cool little thing there, but just super fun. I mean, so they're totally hooked on it. They can't wait to go back.
That's awesome. Do you think that the crying and the emotion was a in the moment, oh, did I screw up? Or do you think it was more of a Dad's here and I didn't do this and Dad wants me to do this? Or where do you think their head was at?
Luckily, I think most of it was just like, did I, like Sarah, she was like, because that was the first thing she said. It's like, Dad, did I do something wrong? And I was like, no, Sarah, you're good. You made, I'm not trying to toot my own horn here, but I'm not like, again, because I'm kind of like, I've just ridden the back of having a lot of fun and some success from good people mentoring me. So I feel like I could honestly say it wasn't like I was really pressuring the girls. Like, oh, you got to kill that deer. Like, nothing like that. So we were having a great time. Eric's a really patient dude. Eric is actually really good at, like, even though he's got all this experience guiding, like not like guiding us, like again, just really good at advice and everything. So anyway, so I feel like the environment there was pretty good. Where it wasn't like a lot of pressure, but she was just like, oh my,
that's awesome, man.
Did I mess up? Did I do something wrong? And we're like, no, you're good.
Yeah. And Eric does have patience. You know his story where the guy pulls the gun up and over him and then fires it. Oh my gosh. Yeah. I lose it. Right? Yeah. Like, that's it.
I can tell you for sure that you probably want to get Eric back on, because I've heard a lot more stories that
are well, awesome. You write down the stories that you want him to tell and send it back my way. I'd love to.
Yeah, yeah, sounds good. Sounds good. Yeah, no, I love that guy. So okay, so I got a couple more. So I I wanted to kind of share a little bit of just my last elk hunt. This last season, I drew um, uh, early archery bull tag in that same unit near Alpine, and I had killed a bull there. I drew that same tag about 5 years earlier, so I was pretty stoked to draw that tag again. So man, you know, and again for that area, I kind of had decided like a lot of the areas that I knew were a lot of what I kind of knew a lot of other people knew. So that I've always had a fair amount of pressure in there when I've been in there and helped other buddies in there. So I was kind of this hunt. I decided like, dude, I want to get lost a little bit. I want to kind of get out into a wilderness area and just kind of back, hike in and
Yeah.
try to. So I share. So I invite a good buddy of mine that's an exceptional hunter. And he was one of the guys that kind of helped me kill my first bull in that unit a few years earlier. So he came. So he was cool. He came out and so he was helping me. And actually, Eric came down again. And he came with his son to most film content for capture. And he brought his boy and they were doing some scouting for me and trying to get some video and everything. He didn't have a whole lot of time right then. He would have been able to come back and help me at the tail end of my hunt if I hadn't tapped out. But so for the first couple of days, it was just me and my buddy Jared, and so we go out at first morning, a ton of action. We get into hearing a bunch of screaming bulls. We pretty quick we get into this this herd that had a really nice bull, broken forth, but he was a really good bull. Had like 20, 30 cows with him. So kind of chased that bull around. Couldn't quite make anything happen that morning. The next morning we end up getting in on me and Jared end up getting in on the same group. And again got a couple of really close calls. With this group it was always like, you think they're slowing down, you think you got enough cover, you think the cows are behind cover or something like that, and you make a move and cows keep making you, and you screw it up.
Yeah.
So a bunch of that, and so a couple of days of that, then my buddy Jared ended up having to leave, and Eric wouldn't have been able to come back with me for about almost another week. So I was kind of debating, like, well, do I, get another buddy going, and or is like, but then I was like, dude, I think I want to just go in by myself. Like I hadn't really done a lot of that big game hunting. Again, I'm still kind of new and building some experience. Now, I also am sitting there thinking like, I've been doing this for a little while. I think, I'm thinking I'm decent at this point.
Confident enough.
So yeah. I've ridden the wave of like, you think you know something, you get humbled, and then you kind of learn something and you're humbled. And so I've ridden that wave a few times. So I'm just thinking I'm like, I could maybe put it together. So I decided to go out by myself, and I knew I was going to have like 3-4 days by myself before Eric could come back and help. So I'm like, yeah, dude, I'm just going to rock it by myself. So and that's when all like it was awesome, but it was like humbling. Like spoiler alert, I didn't tagging out, which I was super stoked about. But the days leading up to that, dude, I was just like, you suck, bro. Like, cause I was making, I was making, I had like 2 days of making a lot of really good decisions and putting myself in front of elk and creating a lot of opportunity. And I feel like that, okay, I had learned enough to kind of, figure out where they're going to be, so anyways, long story short, I had created a lot of opportunity, but there was probably in those 2.5 days, there was probably 3 times that I would get either drawn back or almost drawn back and just totally screwed up.
Yeah.
So I'm sitting here thinking like, dude, I'm creating a lot of opportunity, but like sealing the deal, I suck at sealing the deal. So I'm like, oh, okay. So then the day before I ended up killing a bull, I go back out and I was like, okay, and luckily this wilderness area, it's kind of funny because like work in this wilderness area because I love glassing. A lot of the guys that, kind of I've been, hunted under, Eric included, it's like, big on glassing. And so I do love glassing.
Yeah.
So it was a little bit funny for me to like get into this wilderness area where it really wasn't glassable. It's a lot of rolly, kind of thicker cover, but it was like, dude, like the elk are in there. So I was just like, so I wasn't doing a lot of glassing, but so it was just a different kind of hunting for me, but it was super fun because just in elk all the time. So so the day before I kill the bull, I end up, coming and also spending some time in this wilderness area. I was also realizing I just kind of started observing that there's a lot of elk, a lot of animals were just trying to kind of funnel into this one bowl that's right in the middle of this wilderness area. They kept funneling in this bowl. So I was like, all right, well, obviously it's a good place to prioritize. So I start working my way in there this uh, day before I kill the bull, and I'm starting to get close to this bull, and I throw, because actually, just for context, the first 2 days the elk were real vocal,
Yeah.
and then they just kind of got really quiet after that. So I was just doing real tentative little locator bugles just to kind of see what was going on. So I get close to this bull, and I throw a little locator bugle, and then in the bowl I got a really weak response. So I was like, okay, I'm going to work my way up in there. So I kind of work up in there on the good side of the wind, drop in. I don't see anything in this bowl, and then so I kind of even sit down, and I had a little bit of advantage. I glass a little bit, and then I uh, pull out a snack and whatever. And then, so I'm chilling there for a little bit. And then I was like, well, before I leave, I'll just throw another locator bugle. And so I call, and a group must have just moved in on the other side of the bowl, because I got a really loud, very aggressive call. And I was like, oh, freak, dude. So I kind of work in as far as I had cover down into kind of the middle of this bowl. And I see a bunch of cows bedded up on the rim, and it's that same bull that we saw the first day. And and once I get in close enough to the cover that I had, I threw him another bugle, and he gets real aggressive, and then comes down. But he comes into the middle of the bowl. He's about 120 yards from me. So, and you could just tell it was open enough where he's expecting to see something. So I didn't really want to risk like doing another call. And his cows are up there bedded. So I was thinking, dude, he ain't going nowhere. I'll just see what we can make happen. So he stood there for a long time, kind of like, trying to figure out what was going on. Finally, he just kind of worked his way back up to his cows and sat there with his cows. So I decided, I was like, well, dude, they ain't going anywhere. I'm just going to chill. So I got behind a tree, and I sat down on my pack and just pulled out my snacks. And I'm just, and I'm probably about 250 yards away at this point.
Oh, that's closer than I thought. Okay, cool.
Yeah, no, it was cool. It was a good look. So I was just sitting there leaning against my pack, poking out behind the tree, and just kind of keeping an eye on what was going on with my binos. And it was kind of funny because, like, while I was sitting there chilling, like, some does popped into the bowl and cut right in front of me. And once they got on my downwind side, this doe kind of looks up at me and is like, "What's going on?" I'm not moving, and she's just kind of concerned. And then I hear some crackling to my right, and but I don't dare move because I'm, this doe's looking at me, so I'm not moving. And also by this time, you hear crackling in the trees, and you first get in the woods and you think it's like every noise is an elk, and then you realize, no, there's like 100 squirrels in here dropping stuff,
throwing rocks at you, telling you to get out of their area.
Yeah, make. So I hear this crack to my right, and so I assume it's a squirrel or something like that. So, but then the deer takes notice of whatever made that sound. They bump out of there, and at that point, I once they clear out, I kind of look over. I don't see anything, so I'm just sitting there chilling. So I'm there about like 30, 40 minutes, just chilling, eating, keeping an eye on these deer. And then I hear a noise on my right again, and I look, and there's two spike bulls that were bedded up like 30 yards from me but it was behind some deadfall so when they bedded up, I didn't see them when I looked back over there. So yeah, I'm chilling there for like 30, 40 minutes with these, not knowing that there's two spike bulls right to the right of me. And so I look up, and I look over as they stand up, and they just kind of meander off. Now, again, I'm not really a trophy hunter, but at this point in my head, I really wasn't excited to shoot spike. So I wasn't going to try to shoot one of them. So they wander off, and I was like, well, that's cool. Good close look to it. So these elk kind of get up. Bull nudges all his cows up. They roll off the edge of the bowl, and so I kind of track up there, and I was like, well, it's midday. I'm just gonna try to keep up with them. They end up dropping in this cut, and then cutting way up this draw, and they were moving at a good pace. While I was like, you know what, I don't think they're good. I'm not probably going to be able to keep up with them, and I'm kind of betting, they're probably going to come back to this area later on. So I'm just going to kind of camp out here. So I hiked around, found a couple new cool spots. Just had a really good time by myself. Just even like midday, I'm at a watering hole reading a book, eating a snack. I'm not hunting. I'm just a dude loving it out in the woods.
Just living the dream.
Yeah, it's so fun. So then once it starts getting light enough, I was like, well, dude, I'm going to go try to work back kind of toward that area and kind of see if we can find something. So I'm a cut away where it drops down. There's some water, and then there's that bowl that I'm thinking good chance if something's going to be at. So I start working, and I'm trying to kind of glass across to see if I can see anything in there. And then I'm working around and, lateral to it, kind of keeping an eye on there. And I'm, being dumb because I'm looking more toward the bowl than where I'm going. And then I see one bull just bump and just tail off kind of across the cut toward that bowl. And he was a really good bull. And I was like, damn it. So freaking bull, I was like, I bumped that guy. But also when I bumped him, I saw a butt walking away from me, kind of casually walking away. So I'm thinking, like, okay, well, let's go see what that was. So I kind of tail it for a while, and I tail it for a while, and I get thinking, like, okay, maybe he's outpaced me, and I ain't keeping up. So I try to cross the cut back to get back to that area, and then parallel to me at the same time I did it, this bull maybe 200 yards away does the same thing, crosses over, and I'm like, oh freak, that was a bull, and it was another really good looking bull. So I get in there and I'm like, at that point, I just kind of had this thought. I was like, it's getting kind of late. I'm guessing those bulls, that group is probably coming back. I just bumped another good bull, saw that other good bull. And I was like, dude, that group, that bull, I've been following has a bunch of hot cows, and there's all these other bulls that I'm like, dude, this is where it's going to be at in the morning. Like, this is going to be hopping. So I'm like, okay, like my plan is like, I'm going to get out of here. I left some time on the clock, and I was like, dude, but I'm just going to get out of here and make sure that I'm back here really early in the morning, because this is probably where it's going to be happening.
Yeah.
So next morning, I get back out there nice and early. So it was, it was a good hike back in there, and I'm there right before first light. And then boom, and right when I'm getting close to this bowl, I'm hearing just going nuts. Bulls just sounding off, going nuts, and I'm just getting jacked, dude. Super excited. So I'm just like, oh yeah, dude. So I kind of get into this bowl where where all the action was, and then I'm hearing a couple of bulls that seem kind of close. So I'm like, okay, I'm gonna crest over the lip of this and get down to where I kind of see, and because at this point my thought is I'm going to try to get between two bulls that are making noise and see if they come at each other.
Yeah.
So I get over into the I crest over, I get behind this tree, and I've got located where I'm hearing two good bulls, and then I see the one the where I'm hearing a bull to my left. I see this bull coming up out of this draw, and he's a nice bull. Like he's I'm not the best field judge, but I feel comfortable saying that he was a good 340, 350 plus bull.
That's a good bull.
And this unit has the potential for really good bulls.
Yeah.
So it's a great unit. And it's funny because like going into that hunt, I kind of had told myself, hey, I'm the first 75% of my hunt, I'm going to be trophy hunter. I want to shoot a good bull. And then the last 25%, I want meat in the freezer. So that was kind of like my mentality going into it. So here I am sitting there, and nice bull coming up out of this draw, like really hot to get after, whatever he's hearing back to my right. So I'm like sitting there getting all excited. And I got good cover behind some, a line of trees. I got my bow. I have that spot hog double pin, adjustable sight. So that's what I shoot. So this bull is coming up out of the draw, and then the other bull that I hear, I could tell isn't like directly opposite of me. He's a little off to the right. So I'm sitting here kind of thinking, okay, at some point he's going to start angling over more directly to that bull. So he's coming up out of the draw. He starts to angle like I'm hoping. And I pop up, I ranged him 65 yards. So I'm like, sick. So I look down and I set my sight at 65. And at that moment, I'm thinking this bull is so dead. And so I got my bow set at 65, and I look back up and I'm like, oh freak, he's coming right back at me. And at that, so like he had started angling over, and then he shifted and is like coming right at me again. So in my mind, I get all flustered. I'm like, well, what the freak? I just ranged 65. Do I rerange him? Do I readjust my bow? And I'm like, oh, so I'm getting all flustered. Like, what's the right call? Before you know it, he's 30 yards from me, and he's popped out behind a couple of brush, but behind a couple of trees. I'm not drawn back, and he notices me and he's staring at me, and he's all amped up. So he gives me a pretty good long look, and the whole time I'm just like, you idiot. Like in hindsight, I'm like, draw your damn bow back and just hold a little low, and you would have been fine.
Yeah.
And I'm sitting there, and I figured this out about the time that he's staring at me, and I'm not drawn back. I'm just like, you idiot. And again, this whole hunt, I've been making all these good decisions and just screwing the pooch when it comes to actually seal the deal and kill something. So I'm sitting here just like, I can't believe this happened again. I go ahead and I try to pull the bow back, and then he bumps, and I try to call and get him to stop. Doesn't happen. So here he is again. You go from like thinking this bull's so dead,
Yeah,
to like, you just screwed up another one, bro. You suck at this. So I'm just like, oh, dude. So I'm so frustrated at myself. And so I end up, but luckily there's a lot of other calling going on. I was like, well, I got to go get on some other stuff. And so I end up, actually calling in another spike. And again, I could have shot that spike, but I was just, not excited to kill spike. So I found it, and I get on another group. Again, I make another good call where I try to bust down this old forest access road to get in front of this group. I made the right call. I got in front of this group, but so much time, I'm crossing back into them, but so much time has gone by, I start to think I screwed it up again. I didn't get there in time. And then right about the time I give up on thinking that I got in front of these elk, and I start to thinking, the plant, boom, here they come out. It's just like, oh, freaking idiot. So then by that time it's about midday enough where I'm like, oh, okay, things are going to slow down. I tried chasing a couple of groups that were calling, but it was bad wind and bad elevation. So I was just like, okay. So I end up just deciding like, well, again, I'm like super frustrated. I'm like, Eric could come back out with me in a couple of days. Do I call it in? Do I, so I end up kind of slowly working my way all the way back up around. I was a couple miles away at this point. So I took from where that bull was. So I was like, well, everything's been happening in this one spot. I'm going to go back. So I worked my way back kind of all day, and and then I end up kind of camping out there for the last, it's a couple hours before daylight or before end of light. So I end up going back there and kind of camping out again. I finished the book I was reading and everything, and then and uh, and then I look over, and then I see and I hear something in some smaller timber. There's a raghorn raking his lanterns there, and he's about 120 yards away. So I try to get up, get ready, work my way in. He's working away from me. I give him a little call. He kind of ignored it, didn't really see, so he just kind of worked off of me. So then I'm sitting there thinking like, well, if I got about an hour of light left, and I realized that bull had probably worked up an old forest access road that had been, grown over and cut the access off a long time ago. But I was like, dude, they're probably working that road. So, and it's going to funnel right in there. So I was like, well, if anything else comes in, there's a good chance it's going to come up that road. So I decide, well, that little thicket of brush where he's at, I'm just going to go camp out there and see if anything ends up funneling up to me. So I get there, and I'm like, okay, dude, I'm going to get set up. Like I've got all these like small, short brush. I'm thinking I'm going to be in good cover. I kick the needles all around. I throw my pack off. I'm like making sure I could take any step I want to without making any noise. And I'm like, all right, dude, all right, I'm set. And like, if something comes up, I've got cover behind me. I'm probably good. Like I'm thinking I'm full on ninja mode here. So, so sure enough, like half an hour before end of light, two bulls start coming up this road, this old road. And I'm like, oh, sick, dude, this might happen. And I'm sitting there thinking, and I even look, and I was like, well, the back bull is a little bit bigger than the front one, so I'll shoot the back one. So,
count your chickens.
I know. I'm like, oh, yeah. In hindsight, I'm like, but I'm sitting there thinking, well, he's definitely knows, so I'll try. So the first bull starts getting in, and he gets toward like the first gap that I think I probably shoot at. So I ranged that bull at 65. He so I'm sitting there thinking, okay, as they move forward, then when that second bull hits that gap, I'll have a good chance. I'm already ranged, hits that gap, I'll shoot him. So right about the time that and they're kind of paced with each other, and for some reason that first bull decides to kind of hot foot it up a little bit quicker, and as that second bull is kind of coming in, and so he's coming in a little bit quick, so I'm like, oh shoot. So he gets in, and so now that first bull, right about the time that that second bull hits that gap where that I've got ranged and I want to shoot him at, the first bull comes in and is getting kind of close, and he's like 40 yards from me, but I'm thinking like, dude, I'm so covered up, like, dude, that bull looked right at me and is just walked in on.
How was your wind? Did you have good wind?
And I'm sitting there being no, I had good wind.
Okay.
I had great wind because the sun was setting to kind of right behind those bulls, so prevailing wind was great. Wind was good, so I'm like, how the freak does this bull see me? And I'm so. But and that second bull stopped in that gap. Once he noticed the first bull stopped. So I'm like, okay, all right. So I'm sitting there, but again, I'm not quite drawn back yet, because I was like just about to draw on the bull in that gap when this other bull kind of came up close, and I didn't want to spook it, so I'm kind of ready, but that first bull looks at me and he doesn't give me hardly a look at all, and he just books it, takes off. But during that time, I hurried up and drew back, and I got on that bull, and that was in that gap, which I knew was about 65, and luckily that second bull just bounces and takes, does a little bit of a U-turn and just bounces back. And the way that my bow is with my bow, that 2-pin, it's like the one I adjust is 65, and the next one gives me another 10 yards.
Okay.
So I was about 7. So I'm thinking, okay, well, it just seemed like, okay, I got drawn back. He did a little 180, and then I was like, dude, he probably bumped back about 10 yards. So I just kind of held it on that second pin and sent it, and then I heard that impact on the lawns. It was a great shot, just double lung, just over the top of the heart. Didn't hit the heart, but double lunged it. And then so I'm like, oh frick, dude. So he runs about 100 yards. I see him go down, and I'm just like, what the freak just happened? And then all this emotion of just like, dude, I've been creating all these opportunities, and then I just get freaking schooled when it comes to actually time to kill something. And then that morning, I mean, because again, all day I'm fighting like, dude, you just screwed up a chance on a really nice bull, and just like, so for it to finally come together, and then and again, half an hour before light, so now I've got a lot of work, and I'm out there by myself, and I'm a ways back into this wilderness area. So, but it was just awesome. So get up. He ended up being a little smaller 6, not a great bull by trophy standards, but that's the other thing too. It kind of made me realize that, again, here I am. It's not like I'm a lifelong big game hunter, but I had got to a point where I had this expectation. I'm going to be a trophy. I want to shoot a big bull for the first 2/3 of bit of this hunt. So it kind of made me realize, like, dude, like how jacked I was, because this is probably like barely over 300-inch 6 by.
That's a good bull. That's a real good bull. I mean, you said the unit is better potential, but a lot of guys love a 300-inch bull.
Yeah, and I realized, like, you know what? I'm not experienced enough to have the right to be disappointed. Even just my raw emotion at the time, I was so jacked. Yeah. But it kind of made me realize, like, dude, for how excited I am that I just dumped this bull, like, why? So it kind of made me just reevaluate, like, expectations. Like, I still feel like I want to. I freaking love it. Everybody wants to chase that, some of those better bulls and all that, and I'll do that, as long as I can. But it still made me realize, like, what an amazing experience this was, doing it kind of the first real big game hunt on my own, and the ups and downs and everything. It's just so fun.
That's amazing, man. It's a cool story, and it shows the perseverance, which is something that I need when I'm in the woods. Because like, man, I show up every hunting season like I'm the best. I'm gonna kill a bull opening day. It's like 3 hours into opening day, I'm like, this is hard. Why am I doing this? And it's just staying with it, man. Just staying with it. And even though you're telling yourself you're screwed up, just sticking with it, and you got it done. It's an awesome story.
Yeah. No, it was awesome. It was super fun. So if you got time, I have one more story. Okay. It's a poop story. I've noticed that's been a recurring theme on your podcast.
Hey,
the last little bit.
I mean, we've had a few. We've had a handful. That's a gross way to analyze poop stories. Yeah. We've had a couple.
Yeah. So you're cool.
Yeah, man.
Throw that in there. Okay. All right. This will be the last one. So I, one day, at Gibbs Arms, we've got our crew of dudes, and we're just out lunch, out having lunch, and for whatever reason, the conversation starts turning into like funny poop stories.
Yeah.
Not necessarily hunting, just like we start talking. So I kind of saved this one story about my brother-in-law that I don't feel like I could share right now, but I tell that story to the dudes, and 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 then maybe I'll tell you later. But so I tell that story thinking it's a pretty good one. And our accountant, he's a really good buddy of ours that we've done some hunting with, and he's a solid dude. So he's like, dude, I'm totally not that guy to like one up people, but I've got an amazing poop story. And I was like, all right, let's hear it. So he's like, so it was his good friend growing up. It was his dad that did classic Alaska bush plane, fly you in,
Cool. Very cool.
amazing experience.
Yeah.
So he's like, dude, my buddy's dad just got back from this hunt, and he had a doozy. So they fly him in, has a great hunt. He's got 2 dudes, so it's 3 dudes out hunting. Pilot picks him up, and he's got 2 dudes in the back. This guy's buddy, and So the dad is in the front seat. Apparently they've got 3-4 hour whatever long flight it was back to wherever they're going, and this guy says like, dude, I've got the squirts so bad, like I like, what do we do, and the pilot is like, dude, well, we can't stop right now, like what, like, so apparently everybody in the plane starts to look for what, so they find a plastic bag, find some sort of plastic bag.
Oh God.
So this guy in the plane on the front seat somehow, positions himself in enough to get, to do his business in a plastic bag. Okay. Ties it up, which I got to imagine at that point already is like, okay, that's going to stink the plane up pretty bad, but hey, we'll vent it out. It'll be all right.
I just had like a daydream of like them be like, throw it out the window, and then the wind just spraying it everywhere inside. This is an awful scenario, but I might be getting ahead of us. Okay, you go ahead.
No, you're a mind reader. You're so that's exactly what happened.
No.
They're like, get that out of the plane. He opens the window, and instead of like placing it out or holding it or securing the bag until it's free and clear, he decides to try to throw it out the window. And exactly like you said, wind catches it, hits the frame of the window, bag explodes all over everybody in the plane.
Oh God.
So now, and then you've got dudes just throwing up.
Yeah.
Throwing up.
That's reasonable.
You've got diarrhea, you've got throwing up, and So apparently, then he tells us the story. He's like, dude, at that point, the pilot is just opening his windows, everyone's just trying to survive, and they've got a couple more hours of this flight. So they're all just like, just sitting in misery during this flight and just apologizing to the pilot and everything. And they're just like, oh my gosh, this is horrible. So they land, all of them just empty their pockets of whatever money they had and give it to the pilot. And we are so sorry. Like, vomit, diarrhea all over his plane. So they give all their money, whatever they can to this pilot. And then apparently they go to a car wash and just hose each other off, strip down, throw away all their clothes, dig in their hunting packs and get whatever.
Out. They weren't flying in.
They were flying out.
That's so convenient. Yeah. I was worried. Okay, keep going.
Yeah, they were flying out. Bush plane lands. They're at wherever they're going to hit their next plane to get, the next bigger plane. So that's some little bit of an airport or whatever. So they car wash themselves, spray them off, throw away their clothes, dig some smelly hunting clothes out of their pack. They've got a couple of hours to till their next flight. So at this point, enough time has gone by where they're like, kind of like, oh my gosh, that was horrible. They go and chill in some restaurant, get some food, and they're finally at the point where they can kind of laugh about it. They're like, oh my gosh, that's horrible. I can't believe, whatever. So and then apparently one of the dudes looks over to I think it was the dad, looks over to one of the dudes and is like, wait, hold on a second. Reaches over and plucks a piece of corn out of the dude's hair.
Oh my gosh. That's so gross. That is such an awful experience.
Oh, it's so disgusting. So disgusting. My accountant calls it the corn story. So whenever we're at camp, hunting camp, we're like, like, dude, you got to tell the corn story.
Yeah.
So,
Gosh. So what gave him the squirts, right? Like, did he drink some water and not finish it, or?
he didn't say. That would be good intel to have. Yeah. And for future reference. But no, I didn't
like, you're
get
thinking
off task.
you're out there eating nothing but peak refuel. That gives me the toots. It doesn't necessarily give me the squirts, but like, I want to avoid that situation no matter what.
Yeah.
Ugh.
Yeah, dude. Horrible.
Well,
horrible.
Man, Kevin, thank you for all of the stories, but the last one. I really appreciate you coming on, man.
Don't let it deter. Yeah, it won't deter us from any future Alaska trips.
Let's do this, man. Why don't you tell the people what you're up to, and we'll talk a little bit about Capture, talk a little bit, and if you want them to follow you or Capture or whatever, share that stuff.
Yeah,
we'll get out of here, man.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. So, Capture, again, we're having a lot of fun. It's been a long road. We, I think Eric kind of mentioned it. It's like, we were all excited when we first met and kind of, came up and conceived some improvements to the design, had a couple waves of testing and took in some really great feedback from some really legit dudes that hunt all the time, and took that feedback in and kind of made it a lot better. So luckily with this the final wave of testing that we did, we've just had such great feedback from a lot of these like really legit dudes that have been involved testing with it the whole time.
That's
so
awesome.
We're super stoked to get it finally out. We're coming out with the two iPhone 16 cases, some of the Samsung cases. So it's busy right now, just kind of expanding the lineup. We make the, part of the unique, feature of our program is that we integrate with the eyepiece and use that space inside of the rubber eye cup, that gap between the lens and that. So it's a little more work to create a replacement eyepiece, but it just really cleans up and makes the system so user friendly and so such streamlined. Awesome. Doesn't interrupt your viewing experience at all, and you don't have to do anything to optic to throw your phone on it and start getting video. So
that's awesome, man.
So anyways, we're real busy right now, just designing new eye cups we've got the whole swirl lineup pretty much. We've got a couple of Koa, we've got a couple Mavens, we've got some Zeiss and some loopholes, and we're there's other companies that we're working with. So right now the game is just trying to get a lot of start really getting wide into the whole family of optics that are out there. So that's what we're busy doing. So yeah, if you guys want to follow us, it's just Capture with a K, capturegear.com, and same social handles. Eric has a really good Instagram going on with Killshot Central, so he promotes it on there too, and you could feel free to reach out to Eric on that. So yeah, I mean, me personally, we're owners, but Dave and I just kind of follow, serve the engineer role, and Eric does more of like the customer service kind of stuff. So just reach out to him if you're interested in the Capture stuff.
Sweet, man. You got any personal socials you want to share? Nah.
No, I'm one of like the most least active dudes on social ever. So
totally fine. I would be non-active because it's pretty important for the podcast sake, but otherwise,
yeah.
On my personal, I share like one picture a year, maybe on my personal Instagram. With the podcast one, got to be active. So, well, Kevin, man, this is fun.
Absolutely.
Thanks for reaching out. I really do appreciate you. And guys, if you haven't listened to Eric's episode, he's got some great stories about guiding. Kevin, thank you for your stories. If any listeners out there have more poop stories, please reach out to me. I'd love to connect with you and hear them. Kevin, thank you, man. I appreciate you.
Yep, and I really appreciate it, man. Yeah. Have a good one.
All right, guys, that's it. Another couple stories in the books. Again, Kevin, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. I really enjoyed hearing all those stories about the rabbits and the mountain lions and all that crazy stuff, as well as your amazing elk stories. So thank you, sir. I appreciate you. To you listeners, thank you guys for tuning in. Again, please go follow Capture Gear. And beyond that, guys, give us a follow, give us a 5-star review, send it to a friend, help us grow. Other than that, get out there and make some stories of your own. Thank you.